Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. It says it's disabled screen sharing. Can you give me permission to share?
How about now?
Let's try. Yep. All right. You guys seeing that now?
We do.
Okay. Awesome. So I'm here, Erika Lehman, Senior Associate and Project Manager with DLR Group, but I also have with me today Jennifer Tambor-Poland, who is one of our team members who's been helping me with the project. So we're going to share this presentation so you don't have to hear my voice the entire time. And just she has some insight and expertise that she's been working on with the project to be able to share with everyone today. Also, it's a pretty informal presentation, just trying to give you guys a sense of what the project is made of, and then how we got to where we are. So the project is an elementary school in the city of Alexandria, and we're going to talk about the concepts and how we got to there, our site plan, our building design. We're talking about sustainability, some of the interiors, and we'll just show you a few of the images. You'll see sort of a mix of images. I list the project as almost finished. It was occupied at the start of the school year, but as we all know, these things tend to linger a little bit. So we're still doing punch list and a couple of specialty items that we're still waiting to get completed on the job. So you might see some in progress information here today. So for concepts, one of the most important things for us is really how do we start a project and how do we engage with the community and stakeholders relative to the project. And we really set these goals out. We have a process that we call values, and we go through that analysis with the team to really understand what are the most important priorities. So we get the top 10 values for the project. And this is really defined by the community, and Alexandria City Public Schools has a process where they have a committee that's set up as a part of sort of a structured committee with school team members and community members alike. So on the left, you see the sort of top 10 values. Community access. This is an important physical site for the neighborhood, but also especially important because it links to a large park called Forest Park, which connects between the elementary school and all the way through the woods to the high school on the other side. So it's a really important community link. It was important to understand that community context. Active spaces was the second most important thing. We really wanted to maximize the potential for play, outdoor learning, and community use. City of Alexandria has a mandatory shared use program that they have in place, which was a challenge we happily accepted. This project, as our shared use aspect, is shared use with recreation parks group in the city. So we do have spaces that are dedicated specifically to recs and park, as well as the shared use of the exterior fields and play spaces. Natural light was real important. Universal accessibility. This was important relative to the site, but also relative to the building. And when we talked about that, that ran the gamut from sort of say physical site accessibility to things like gender neutral restrooms, which Jen will talk about more. It was really important for this to be something that was an inclusive space. Safety, of course, very important to every school, but in particular in this particular neighborhood, because there was a large shooting that happened not far from where the school building is. So we had a lot of conversations about the importance of where the building sits on the site relative to that. Play area played a high priority. Equity, this is a diverse school community in a diverse city. So that was important to acknowledge. Community activation, this is really a building that operates from 7 in the morning till 10 at night. And then energy uses. So this building will be the first net zero elementary school or net zero school for the city of Alexandria. It's part of their green priorities. And so we're still in the process of getting that done, but net zero is our mandate. And then on the right side, you see there are a lot of things that we talked about with teachers. We spent a lot of time sitting in the school, doing activities with the teachers, really understanding, because we were making a transition from a school that was very much kind of, we'll call it old school, cells and bells, double loaded corridor, very closed off classrooms, to a school that's much more community-based, cohort-based, open and visible, and a much more sort of lots more shared spaces than owned spaces. So what came of all of that sort of center of priorities was really starting to look at the building in diagrammatic form, and how do we separate the school from the community spaces? How do we deal with the fact that we have these two different primary users? How do we deal with all the different vehicular access? And then how do we deal with things like access and views? And so we landed on a concept, and we did a bunch, but we landed on a concept that we call the forest concept. And fairly obvious naming convention, but it was really named because the entire building is pushed against the northern property line and faces the forest, and then is pulled back from Janney's Lane, which is the main street. This is a thoroughfare that connects between King Street and Quaker Lane, if any of you are familiar with Alexandria. But that premise of really pulling the building back off of the street a little bit was important for the community placement of the building and how it relates to the neighbors. You'll see in the massing eventually the building also steps up, so it's a taller mass in the back than it is in the front. But really this kind of site security and safety and site circulation was really driven by our ultimate placement of the building on the site. And then we had a blocking diagram that basically created a building that was essentially a V shape, and we had this interesting little dining space, which you'll see as I pop to the next slide. That curve, we all kind of came to the conclusion that it really didn't relate to anything else we were doing in the rest of the project. So this is sort of the more developed and finalized, or I'll say this was sort of the DD, late SD, early DD site level plan, where we really kind of straightened out the edges and started to address the fact that we really needed 3 fingers in the site, and we needed to step the building up more as we went along. And that continued to evolve. But the big premise here was really that all of the primary classrooms would be on the north facade of the building, and therefore all facing the forest. And then the specialty spaces would all be in the front of the building for that main community access. And this is the point at which we kind of got 2 entrances, one facing Janney's Lane and one towards the playfields. And that seemed like an appropriate place to put the Wrexham Park entrance. So ultimately, in terms of site design, you can see shaded here in blue, this is the original existing building. So it was 61,000 square feet, 1-story building, just a little over 600 students in the school there. Whereas we had obviously a larger footprint, but we're building a building for 850 kids. And we really did a lot of work, and you'll see it even evolved past these diagrams to really hold that building back and make sure that the building edge didn't get too close to the street, and that we could really honor the gathering spaces, because these were important community centers, not just a place that people drop off and pick up, but really a place where people connected in the larger community. Another important aspect was really how do we address and maximize the open space. So you see they had sort of a small playing field here and some smaller play structures, etc. And then, yes, you are correctly seeing the building actually was over the existing property line. That was a mistake that was made when this building addition was done, and one that we agreed with the city to rectify as we proceeded forward with our project. And sort of in exchange for that, they allowed us to encroach a little bit on that back park area, because it was already disturbed land, for our outdoor classroom space. So we have a little bit of extra outdoor space that we gained there. But in addition, by consolidating all of this play space to the east property line and creating a courtyard scheme, we ended up with significantly more maximized play space for the school in the long run. And then really looking at this building and how it sat on the site relative to the neighbors was a really important aspect. So you see on this bottom section looking along Janney's Lane, we really sit this building back quite far from the east property line, which were the neighbors where the hill, it's kind of slipping down the hill. If our building had been so close to that, we would have towered over their backyards. So having that play field space, being able to be removed from this property line really created a buffer that felt more comfortable. And then similarly over here, although not quite so far removed, we were able to utilize that space for our site circulation. This building has a 85 car parking garage below it. That was an important decision that we made in the project to put the majority of parking below grade, and that's really just for teachers and staff. But we wanted to maximize that outdoor space, not use it for parking. So that was kind of the big decision-making point there. And then, as I said, as we look across the building from the street zone up to the residential or to the park area in the back is stepped up along that facade so that the scale of the building is respectful of the rest of the buildings that are on Janney's Lane. And so in the end, this is sort of our final site plan that you see out there built today. We spent a lot of time making sure that we were maximizing site circulation and making that as efficient as possible. We have a bus loop here, which they didn't have before. So they were dropping students in sort of a makeshift pull-off lane that was really not safe. So we rectified that situation. But in addition to this being a bus loop, we striped it so that it could be used for after hours and weekend use for parking for these playing fields. So it has this kind of double life. And then we concentrated the rest of the site circulation for cars down to this west side where we have a parent drop-off lane where they can flip back around and get back out onto Janney's. This is a lot of kids get dropped off and picked up. And then also the access to the parking garage. So you come to the north side of the site and go below the building for access to parking. And then of course we did all the sort of expected sort of public space upgrades for new sidewalks, making sure we had safe access to schools for folks to ride their bikes to school and scooters and all of that sort of stuff. And then being able to connect all the way around the site. So if you enter the site on the west end, you can actually take this pathway all the way around the back of the site, all the way around the playing field, around the playground, and back through. This is an important focus on wellness for the school as well as the community. This is something where a lot of neighbors use this as their evening walking path. So it's important for us to make that work for them as well. And there are some fences and gates here, so those can be locked up. Honestly, the program is that they're actually locked during the day to keep folks out of the site while the students are on site, and then opened at night so that the community access for the fields, for the walking paths, for the play areas. The city's policy is that this is public land. It's not just school system. It's not, this is really meant for all the taxpayers, whether your kid goes to the school or not. So you can come play basketball at night. You can come bring your kid to play in the outside play area. The courtyard is a little more isolated. We made that for the early childhood play area. So that one is actually protected sort of, I'll say more or less 24/7. But other than that, the rest of the site is very accessible for community use. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen now, and she's going to talk about sustainability.
Sure. So let me start with
with lead.
Oh, sorry, hold on. Maybe we should.
Hi, Jennifer. It looks like there is an acoustic problem with the microphone.
I think you should silence this. Sorry. Do you want to just go back?
Let's just go back to my mic and let us know if you can hear Jennifer or not.
Hello. Can you hear me?
A little low.
Okay. I'll move closer to.
Yeah, but we're gonna switch. Always the technical difficulties.
Okay, hello.
Hey, there you are.
Welcome to my portion. With our building, we decided to pursue LEED Gold. These are the categories of LEED that the credits are under. So throughout the design phase, every single phase, we still kept in mind what credits. We still kept in mind how the credits to help design the project. So this is our scorecard. We pursued gold, and some of the places that we just did well in were sustainable sites, energy, atmosphere, indoor, environmental quality, and then innovation and regional priority. Some of the places we didn't do too well was just location and transportation. It's just a suburb area, so it's not as dense, and it's also just the land that we already just had to begin with. I feel like this portion is more for new sites. You try to pick a site that is most optimal, but we still did well in everything else. So this is our scorecard. For sustainable sites, the 3 credits I want to talk about was open space, rainwater management, heat island reduction. I feel like with our designing, some things had to be compromised in order for us to gain other things. So in the previous one, we had to lose the credit for reduced parking footprint, but because we moved all of our parking underground, we were able to gain the credit for heat island reduction, which is 2 points versus 1 point. So little things like that were really put into consideration the entire time. For open space, it was very successful because we were able to optimize all of the land. There's barely any hardscapes because of parking moved below grade. And then because there was diverse types of hardscapes, greenscapes, it was able to help earn this credit for us. Heat island reduction was 1 credit. These are just how we prepared the documents too. So we're able to show that, yeah, everything was moved underground, and we just gained so much diverse types of outdoor play for the students. We have the space in section A that is more a learning space. We have the corridor that is a more community hangout, and then we have the more athletic side on the east side. And water efficiency was 1 credit that, because of the way we chose to design our toilets, was just gender neutral restrooms. Our indoor water use reduction went down for our credit. So you can see in our plans, each classroom did have a restroom, but I feel efficiently in our design, it does just work well. And
Yeah, and so I'm just gonna jump in for 1 second on that. You don't need to see my face, but just so everybody understands, this was an important equity decision on the part of the city public schools, was to have all gender neutral restrooms. We actually only have 1 set of shared restrooms in the building, which is adjacent to the cafeteria. And mostly we did that because we had to provide some public restrooms for, parent nights, etc. But every other restroom in the building is an individual stall, fully self-sufficient, self-contained restroom, both inside of classrooms and outside of classrooms. And this was at the time the city's approach towards being aware about the issues around gender and restrooms. So it was done for some really good reasons, but it did sort of hinder us a little bit in terms of, in the end, because we had 0 urinals in the building, and those are our best water saving fixtures typically. We took a hit on our lead points, as well as we actually did not quite meet the city's own goals for water reduction. And we had to kind of apply for a waiver for that. So, and that was something that, we thought about, but I think I just wanted to point it out as an important decision that was made around equity, but also had a significant impact to our compliance. So back to Jen.
I think there's just a lot of, like, in a sense, compromise. In order to be more sustainable, we do have to sacrifice things. In order to be more equitable, we do lose things too. But at the end, it's for the users. So energy and atmosphere is one that we did well in as well, because we're net zero school. We do have PV coming soon onto all the roofs. So yeah, that's
mostly that roof's just covered in dirt in this picture, but they have since cleaned it.
So we will have updated pictures somewhere to view someday. Indoor environmental quality. This one, I think, really tied in well with our innovation credits as well, and just overall being a well-designed space. Interior lighting, you're able to see that we just have so much natural light with the single loaded corridors too. There's just so much natural light coming into every single space. And you're able to see in the plan, sorry, in this part right here, you're able to see just how much of the space actually gets quality views, how much of the space gets direct daylight. So it really is, I think with the credit, we were able to achieve 97% daylight into regularly occupied spaces. And I think also in the 90s for non-regularly occupied spaces. So in return, we really get to reduce the amount of lighting we use all day long, helping us maintain net zero. And for quality views, because of the forest that we have to the north side, it was able to, for quality views credit, we're supposed to have 20 feet after beyond the glazing if we're still able to view outside. Basically, that's how the credit was. And once again, we achieved like 97% for that. And you could just see the ratio of the people to the glazing is just so nice. Like, you're just eaten by the forest, and I love it. And then the innovation credits. So walkable project site, which was to make sure that there's one continuous path around the site and around the building. Designing with nature, biophilic design, we had just earthy elements, just more earth colored scheme around the building, and then just incorporation of greenery everywhere. We were able to achieve all these credits. And then school as a teaching tool, I think, is one that I really appreciate a lot for LEAD, because I just wish that at a young age I was able to learn about sustainability. It's just able to help better our world, and just being able to learn in a sustainable building will just really progress us forward. But yeah, sustainability.
All right. So let me jump through these next. Let's see. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the building and sort of the evolution of design here. So in this set of diagrams, you'll see how we went from some of the early concepts where the building was really 2 distinct wings to a building that is a courtyard building. And just so everyone understands, the real reasoning behind that was because although this is not seeking to be a well building, really fitness and wellness were important priorities for the community. And so we wanted to make sure that this is a building that you can walk around, sort of around the donut. And so we had several iterations of this, and ultimately came to this building that has this kind of bridge that overlooks the field space, and really helps ease the circulation within the building. So on the first floor, while it's not physically connected below, we wanted to make sure that you could get into the courtyard here. So we've actually left that open to the outside, but you can walk out and back in, and this is in a protected zone. So there's sort of free circulation sort of in and out, as well as then that's covered over here. So you have the ability to have this loop here. Again, we kept with this idea of the sort of major public spaces facing Janney's Lane, and then the primary classes academic wing going across the back. And then all of these sort of collaborative zones that you see here in the light yellow that are pull-out spaces for extended learning. And then we have, sort of split up by grade level again. So, sort of this continues to be the lower grade zone, first grade. And then we have, second grade up here. We actually, fairly late in the game, added in a special education self-contained special center. So that's what you're seeing here in the purple. And that was really intentionally pulled to a zone to be grouped together so that they can support each other as teachers and students in that area. And then the other unique aspect of this project is this open media center. So the media center is really designed for the entirety of that orange space. And you just walk through it. The doors are open, you're in and out and through it all day. There are portions of it that are a little more isolated so that you can have this kind of, I'll say, more traditionally quiet media environment, but there's lots of other kinds of things that happen in media centers in schools. And so we wanted to be able to have that open and free flow. And then it also works into our path. And then up on the third floor, you see there's tons of kids up here, but also we have lots of academic supports sort of sprinkled in, extended learning areas sprinkled in. And then you'll see in some photos, all of the upper grade classrooms have an extended learning area that's right outside of the classroom, and quite a bit of visual transparency so kids can be out there learning and doing independent stuff. And actually, it's kind of fun. They have a lot of these bikes where kids can sit on the bike and have a desk in front of them and be on the bike during the day. And so this is a rendered view. I have a couple of photos in here. There are some things that are still to be done. So I wanted to just go ahead and show you guys some pictures of what the ultimate plan is. So we're currently still missing some of our building signage and that sort of thing. But and then the view from the east side, sort of looking from the field. This is our bridge here across here. And then this kind of key, we call it the lantern element here on the corner of the gym, a way to kind of signify entrance for the recreation area. It gets lit up at night, looks kind of fun. From an interiors point of view, one of the things that we like to do is kind of create these mood boards and talk about, how do we create a message behind the interiors? So this really was our wander and explore was our theme for our interiors, and that drove the colors, which were really driven by some of the colors of the adjacent forest space and our focus on biophilic design. We created a color story that worked through the building, mostly divided by level, although we did create a separate zone on the first floor for the pre-K students. They have their own little wing off here to the side, which is important for them because they're just tiny. And then these are some renderings of what we expected the space to look like. Again, with the biophilic design, really important to us to have some materials. We have LVT flooring that's a wood look that is throughout the primary flooring in the building. We have the view when you walk in, you can see all the way to the forest in the back. As well as then we actually have a wood ceiling in our main lobby space. And then the vision of what that upper level of the media center would be, kind of with the pathway coming through, and a vision of what will ultimately be the cafeteria here on the right, which is, I'll just say, still in progress from a constructability point of view. And then I just wanted to kind of show the sort of rendered versus real, right? So one of the big things for us was this vision of how we connect to the forest. But also we created these window seats and put all of our windows very low to the ground. So these windows are about 16 inches up off the floor. And that was important for us because we sat with the school as we were working on the project and realized just how much time teachers and students spend sitting on the floor. And we really wanted them to be able to sit on the floor and still have that visual connection. And we really wanted them to feel like they were in the treetops. And I think that works. And then for the early childhood classrooms where we have the sort of separated cubby areas back here, we also then kind of brought in a lot of intense color and color up onto the ceiling and that sort of thing in order to just make them feel a little more fun and playful. So the left is what we thought it would look like. I will say I didn't have a picture of the red room. There are red rooms. It didn't go from red to green. We have red rooms and green rooms. So it wasn't like we made some change. And then the learning stair, and I'll say that's the one piece where we still struggled a little bit with universal accessibility. You might notice in the rendering that you don't see accessible seating here in the rendering, but you do see a spot for accessible seating both at the bottom and the top of the stair. I think that's still imperfect. I would love to find a way to do a learning stair that is a little more universally accessible, but I will say it has already become a much beloved space in the building and one that they hold their staff meetings on, which is what's happening there on the right. I got to come talk to the staff about what it's like to be teaching in a net zero energy building and the kinds of things that we ask of them to help support that. And then I had mentioned these extended learning areas. So every upper level classroom has its own extended learning area directly outside of it with marker boards and tack boards, and this immediate visual connection to the adjacent classroom. So teachers can send students out here to do some active learning, as well as to have a little bit of their own quiet space when they need to get out of the classroom, but still have a great degree of supervision. And then these are just a few more views of some of the spaces that we have for extended learning throughout. This does actually have furniture. I think when I took that picture, they were cleaning the floors, so all the furniture had been moved out. And then on the upper level, again, these kind of pull-out spaces, classroom, we'll say classroom spaces that aren't exactly classroom spaces. One interesting anecdote I will mention about the connection to the forest here, and I'll say this as a lesson for all of us. We are unfortunately having quite a number of birds fly into the glass because they are seeing the reflection of the forest in the glass. So we are working on a solution that will involve putting some film on the glass and being able to help deal with that. So if any of you are doing projects near a forest, there's lots of bird mitigation stuff that I wish I had realized ahead of time. And then, as I said, we are almost finished. So these are some of the views of the space from the street, and some of our signage and stuff is missing, but basically this is our building. It's a combination of a blend of tan brick, and then the darker brown is a metal panel, which is it's sort of a mottled rust color. We have cowl wall panels and of course lots of storefront and curtain wall glazing, and then the glazed green brick. Everybody was pretty surprised we got a green and brown building built in the city of Alexandria. So I'm pleased that we got that approved. It was really important to us because of the nature of the design, because of the theme and the connection to the forest, and really wanted this project to sit within the forest as well as it could. So that's where all the kind of green and tan colors are coming in. And and luckily the community saw that as important to the project. And then it was also important to us to, again, use all parts of the site. So this is our outdoor learning area on the north, which is not really ours, but it's a part of the park. And then this is just a photo of our courtyard, sort of still a little bit in development here in this photo, a few things still missing, but basically we call this the new forest. So there's actually a couple more even bigger trees that are to be planted in here, but with the idea that even the classrooms that are opening on the south wing still have a beautiful green view to look at when some of those plants grow up. So that's it for me, and I will stop sharing.
Cool. Okay, well,
thanks, Erika. Thanks, Jennifer. That was great.
Thanks for sharing your work with us. I did want to invite everyone. I wrote down in the chat, feel free to turn on your videos, or if you don't feel comfortable, any questions you may have, now would be the moment. I have one question, I guess, while everyone kind of gets ready for theirs. The underground parking, was that, I don't recall if you pointed out, whose idea was that? Was that ACPS?
I think it was a pretty shared decision. I will say it wasn't their initial preference, mostly because of cost. And I don't want to mislead anybody. It cost us about $11 million to build that entire parking garage. We had some contaminated soils. We had lots of issues that, when you start digging in the ground, you get all kinds of special stuff. So it wasn't cheap, but for Alexandria, it's really important to provide parking for their teachers, particularly in this location, which is kind of one of the most suburban schools of the urban school district that they are. So it was important for them to be able to provide parking. And once we realized that we needed all that play space to be able to get the Rexham Park had a requirement to have a U12 regulation field on the site in order to expand their offerings and be able to do competitive sports in their recreation program. So all those things put together just got us to, we really need to put the parking below grade.
Interesting thing to see for an elementary school.
Yeah, it's a big garage too. It's quite sizable. Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions for Erika and Jennifer?
I'll throw one out. First of all, I don't know if you know, but we do Architecture Month activities. Our chapter does in April typically, and building tours are a really good part of that, public outreach and connecting people to things that they probably saw under construction. So put that on your radar, because I'll probably send you a note about that and see if you can help us make that happen with ACPS. We've had some good success with other schools in the past, and so this would be a great candidate. It's also right by my house, and I've been dying to go.
I did hear from the principal that she already has people knocking on the door and asking to come see the building. So it might be a curse to her in the end, but I think they're happy.
I had a question for, I guess, for both of you, but for Jennifer, because she was talking about the lead things. But this idea, which I guess now is not that groundbreaking, but that schools are community amenities and assets. I mean, I grew up in the suburbs, and when school day was over, everybody took off, and public park was over there and the school was here. And certainly in Alexandria, other places now, the public park and the school they're basically the same thing. And I didn't know if that has ever come up in the innovation category of, the fact that people can use the school as a public park means you don't need to build another public park. And, so there's some overlap there that I don't know if that has ever come up in anything that you've looked at. And
that is one of the credits, is joint use facility credit. And you just earn the credit if you're sharing it with other organizations or other parties. Yeah. And I think there is an credit too about it, but
I don't think we can get both, right? No. Like we can either get the joint use credit, which sometimes the joint use credit requires a lot of like MOUs and things like that don't always happen. So you can use the innovation credit if you're doing some stuff. But yeah, I think we can't get both. So we're getting just the baseline joint use credit for this.
I think this one's going to be heavily used. I live not too far from Mount Vernon Community School, which is another City of Alexandria school. And I think people assume it's a public park that just happens to have a school building next to it, because it's so heavily used by the community.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Rexham Park made the I'll say the thankfully logical decision to postpone their programming for this site until the winter semester of their programming, which will ultimately be like their indoor programming of basketball and stuff. But we were not able to deliver the field on time. There were some delays with the contractor, so they postponed that. But there's already pressure, even though they don't have an official program, there's already pressure to say, well, can we use it for a tournament or something like that. So there's lots of pressure, but it's great. It's an urban environment. It should be used all the time. So
Jillian, go ahead. You have a question.
Yes, I heard that you said that you have I guess a bonus for community use. I know in Maryland, the way we do it is you're given 3,000 in square footage that then becomes a cost per square foot that's used that particular year. So they get extra money that way. That's how it's handled here. But how it's handled where you are, is it just a certain amount of money that's tacked on, or is it tied to the amount of area that's actually provided in the drawings? I mean, in the design?
Yeah. So in the city of Alexandria, because they have a requirement for shared use, but what that other shared use might be is it varies from project to project. But essentially, the city council said schools can't just be schools. Schools also have to be other places of community, or frankly, there are schools they've been looking at trying to find a group to do a co-located public housing and school and that kind of stuff. They actually asked us, we looked at a scheme where we had a 2-story school and 2 stories of public housing. Yeah, and they were going to waive our height restriction and everything to be able to do it, but the site was just way too small. Like we couldn't manage the traffic. But so what happens is that in your early concept phase, you're working, the school system is our client, but the city is also involved, and you're working with them to establish what's a compatible shared use for the other things that the city is looking to house. And so, recreation programs are a very obvious and easier one. So that was the one that we landed on here. There have been like discussions about public library, shared use for public libraries, shared use for other just public office spaces. So in this particular project, since it landed as Rexham Park was our partner, the Rexham Park helped fund a portion of the construction, but only the portions that were dedicated only to them. So for instance, the gym that we put in this school was a full-size high school gym, which we typically wouldn't do in an elementary school. Although elementary school of this many kids, ultimately maybe we would have landed on that side, but they funded the delta in the size of the gym per elementary school ed spec to the size of the gym for full high school and rec use. They have a couple of dedicated office spaces, dedicated storage space. We have some dedicated restrooms that are accessible from the outside. So the whole building can be locked down on the weekend, but they can use these restrooms for the fields. So they helped fund those particular pieces of the construction, not really of the design. We just kind of absorbed that into the design.
So the other is just a little question about after the pandemic, we've had some changes in how health suites are treated. And one of the things is some school systems really have taken to creating isolation rooms that are already adjacent to the nurse's office, but have a direct access in and out so that they don't have to go in the health suite and contaminate the rest of the health suite. So it's varying across our state about how something like that's handled. Did you have anything that was specially done in the health suite to handle?
So this was a mid-pandemic project, right? So we started this project in 2019. We were well into design, and actually I think we were working on our demo by the time the pandemic happened. But we ended up adding an isolation room to our health suite, but essentially it's accessed through the corridor. So you can come in the public corridor and walk through the corridor to get to the isolation suite. But that was kind of the best we could do at kind of, I'll say, a relatively last minute change to the design. There are definitely things that had we had more time with that concept, I think we probably would have changed some of the things about how we laid out the health suite. We do have a space in the building that's dedicated. We call it the family room, but it's really a dedicated community room. So there is another way to come through that space and into the kind of isolation area. That's kind of a back corridor. So you could use that as well if you didn't want to take people into the public corridor. But yeah, it's not, it wasn't a first thought priority at the time that we were first designing this.
Yeah. It's a tricky one. And we often find that we have to have them thinking about it pretty early in the design, because the health suite can get like the secondary space and whatever it fits into. And it's like some proportioning doesn't work. And it requires so much oversight from one office that has to be everywhere, or, you just have the nurse has to be central and see everything. So it's one of those things we never, ever have a review that doesn't have a look at that intently to make sure, because safety is so critical in that space. So anyway, I was just curious how you dealt with it down in Virginia.
Yep. If we had known sooner, I think we would have put it in a different spot. Yeah.
We have to wrap up here in a few minutes, and I do have another question. This is a big one. Could you share the total project costs?
Sure, $76 million.
Thanks for that.
Including parking, yeah.
Wow. You can tell it at a larger program when it came to the gym and everything. Like you have 2 gyms and.
Yeah, and this is for up to 850 students.
Yeah.
And that decision was really, again, another equity decision on the school system's part. They had reached a capacity where they could have potentially split the community and had a separate elementary school for one group versus the other. But when they looked at the demographics, they discovered that they would have, if they had done that by boundary, they would have had kind of a bit of a haves and have-nots kind of school separation. And they really didn't want a school that really was, this is the middle class school and this is not, so they decided they would rather maintain the school community as a whole that has a very wide diversity of students, and go ahead and put a larger school on this site. So it's the biggest elementary school I've ever done. It is huge. Those poor little babies who are kindergartners, their little legs carrying them all the way down the cafeteria. We were cognizant of it, but it's a big building. So we have
really hard when you don't enter in the middle. That third floor is also a long stretch because they're not able to all use the elevator, so they're walking up those little
None of them use the elevator. So we have all the little kids downstairs. The first, second grade are on the middle floor, and the special education, and then third, fourth, and fifth are on the upper floor. So I see another thing.
Are there any other questions? We have 4 minutes. I see 1, 2, but it doesn't tell me whose it is.
It's me. Hi everyone. It's me. Hi everyone. My name's Eric Harris. So I just had a by the way, great presentation, Eric and Jennifer. I just had kind of like 2.5 questions. I know we're probably almost out of time, so maybe I'll focus on I guess the first part, like with the diagrams that you were showing, just kind of about safety. I was wondering if you guys had any CEPTED consultants you know, on the project to ensure that those safety issues are addressed. Because obviously, you know, like you were showing, you know, really greatly with the floor plans about like the progression of like the younger kids to more older kids, et cetera. And, you know, I guess it kind of tied into my second question where you kind of showed that that green area. And there was like, I guess a door or two to access it. But then I guess I was wondering, as far as like the biophilic design, did any of those classrooms actually open up to that space? Because I saw like the door to, right, for egress, but was there any thought in maybe you know, having the classrooms where they just literally open up to the space for the children?
Yeah, so we did not have a SEPTED consultant, but we are lucky that the person who was the principal in charge of the project at the time, is a SEPTED certified professional. And I've done a lot of work in that arena. So those concepts were definitely applied to how we looked at the project. We do, as far as the north elevation goes, we have two doorways to the north elevation. So one comes from our extended learning area, and one comes directly from the art classroom, so that art could spill right out into the area out north of their classroom. They've already started spray painting the sidewalk, but we did not want every single classroom with a door. That was something that safety and security just felt is not a good move. So students can come out through, you know, into the corridor and through that extended learning area to get to the north side of the building. And then again, you know, we have the single loaded corridor, but so into the courtyard, you know, you can come from the corridor into the courtyard. And we did on the one band on the first floor where we have two art rooms in this building. And so that second art room actually is like early childhood art and opens out onto the courtyard as well. But really, relatively speaking, and limiting the number of doors on the ground floor as much as we can. I can tell you we have 17 because we have to number all of them. So even with an emphasis on limiting the number of doors, we still ended up with 17 exterior doors on the ground floor. And I will say their safety and security people would have preferred it be more like 10. So, you know, it's a balancing act between giving them the access and the educational priority versus making sure we keep all the doors locked and safe. You know, so and we really looked at it from a lot of visibility of the site coming towards the building, right? So that barrier sort of starts at the sidewalk, and it's very visible from inside the building to outside of the building. So you can see people as they're coming onto the site. Yeah.
Right. I was just curious because thank you for that. I was just curious because if there were limitations, you know, I was just thinking, are there any other ways that you could bring the outside to the interior? I mean, I know that sometimes you know, green walls might be installed or things that, you know, could just to kind of continue to promote that biophilic design. I was just curious about that.
Yeah. I feel like I was so lucky. We were so lucky. You can see even on the that image is on my screen, not on your screen. But we have so much glass on that north facade and so many beautiful trees outside of the building that I feel like we didn't have to pay for any additional green walls or anything. It feels very green. You feel very much a part of the forest when you're in the building. And you know, I might never get a site this good again. So I appreciate it while I can.
Well, thank you, Erica and Jennifer, again for being so forthcoming, sharing all the information we've asked you for. And congrats again on your project. And we look forward to maybe having that building tour and seeing your final product with the PV panels. And thanks everyone for joining us. See you hopefully December in our next meeting.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Take care.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Bye.